our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to shed light about the recent developments taking place in the Gaza Strip, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement that despite its imbalanced and short timeline, Egypt has praised the Security Council adoption of a resolution that calls for the truce in Gaza since the start of the conflict. It stated that Egypt calls for the immediate implementation of the ceasefire in a way that opens a way for dealing with all elements of the crisis. After the U.S. abstained, the UN Security Council endorsed a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza conflict. More details in the following report.
According to a statement issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Egypt has welcomed the Security Council's adoption of a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza for the first time since the beginning of the crisis, despite its imbalance and limited time frame. The Foreign Ministry statement read, "The Arab Republic of Egypt welcomes the Security Council's adoption of a resolution demanding a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip during the month of Ramadan for the first time since the beginning of the crisis, and following the Security Council's repeated inability to reach a resolution demanding a permanent ceasefire." It added that Egypt calls for the immediate implementation of the ceasefire in a way that opens the way for dealing with all elements of the crisis. Earlier on Monday, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution for the first time demanding an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza war after the United States abstained. All 14 other members voted in favor of the resolution, which demands an immediate ceasefire for the ongoing Islamic holy month of Ramadan. The resolution calls for the truce to lead to a lasting, sustainable ceasefire and demands that Hamas and other Palestinian groups free Israeli captives seized on October 7th. The successful resolution was drafted in part by Algeria, the Arab bloc's current member of the Security Council, with a diverse array of countries, including Slovenia and Switzerland. The statement added that Egypt considers that the adoption of this decision, after more than 5 months of Israeli military operations that caused severe harm to civilians in the Gaza Strip, despite its imbalance as a result of its limited time frame and the obligations included in it, represents an important and necessary first step to put an end to the bloodshed and prevent more Palestinian civilian casualties, and to provide the opportunity for humanitarian aid to enter the Strip.
And to shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Medhat Meligy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Sir, why did Egypt, from your point of view, consider the UN Security Council adoption of the resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza to be imbalanced despite welcoming it?
Well, there are several reasons behind that. First of all, the time span is very limited for the implementation of this decision. We are talking about the month of Ramadan, which is about to end.
Yes.
So actually, this is one thing.
Yes.
The second thing, I think that it's unsaid, but it's quite clear, which is how serious is the United States about implementing this resolution. I mean, this is something that we've seen perfectly, that although the United States have abstained from voting against the resolution by using its right to veto it, however, they insisted and they made very clear during the same session that this is an non-binding resolution, and accordingly Israel have said that it will not implement this resolution because it's a non-binding resolution.
Yes.
So actually the situation is very ambiguous from the United States. I mean, are you really supporting peace in Gaza, or you are just trying to please the Islamic countries? Because we have to understand that there is a certain Islamic dimension, which is the month of Ramadan and the holiness of this period for all Muslims. So they wanted to please the Muslims by letting them understand that it cares for the month of Ramadan and preserve the blood of the Palestinians during this holy month. But at the same time, it says it's non-binding, which is something that is aimed to please Israel on the other side. So, I mean, the situation actually is very are not understandable. I mean, if Israel really wants to, if the United States, I'm sorry, wants to force Israel to comply with the international law, they have so many means to do that.
Yes.
First of all, that they stop shipping any arms or any ammunition for the Israelis. Second, that they have to take serious measures about the colonies and the settlements, the illegal settlements. All of them are illegal settlements, as we know, and they have to take major steps towards that. But the idea of trying to hold balance between two positions actually is empty. The resolution from the content of the resolution, I mean, it's like an empty resolution coming right now. Although that many legal experts have said that there is no non-binding resolutions coming out of the Security Council of the United Nations.
Yes.
And so legally, this is a binding resolution. However, we have to wait for the United States, which is the strongest ally of Israel, to force Israel to accept it. But can we really expect something so positive from the United States in the year of the election?
Yes.
I think it's a little bit risky to wait for the United States for this. That's why Egypt, along with other countries, including the United States, are trying to find something, a certain resolution. And we've been listening to reports that we are close from a deal. The major line of this deal consists of the liberation of a certain number of Israeli prisoners against around 700 Palestinian prisoners in the Israeli dungeons. And we are talking here about 100 of those 700 might be condemned for life, prisoners. So there are hopes that we can reach something outside the enclave of the United Nations that failed so far to force Israel to comply with the international law.
Indeed. Sir, how does Egypt describe the resolution's significance in addressing the situation in Gaza, and what does it hope the resolution will achieve with all the problems that you have just mentioned, the timing and many other aspects which, of course, hinder the efficiency of this resolution?
Well, the main idea of any resolution coming out of the United Nations, especially of the Security Council, is the ability of implementing this resolution.
Yes.
And with this reluctant position of the United States to incriminate Israel, as it should, so this casts a lot of doubt on the possibility of implementing this resolution. And we've already heard Israeli Prime Minister saying that Israel will not comply with this non-binding resolution.
Yes.
So this is the main point. But having said that, I think this will add to more pressure. And I think that the Arab League in the United Nations will try to go, if we do not reach any solution with Israel, then we'll have to go to the General Assembly of the United Nations that will also issue a statement or a resolution that is by nature non-binding, since it's not coming out of the Security Council, but still represents the international community in implementing this and hold any arming of Israel, of supplying any arms or any ammunition. And I think that this will put many countries, especially the European countries, against the international organization if they do not comply and continue to supply arms to Israel.
Yes.
And here is the main point, that those countries do not want to be against or to violate any resolution, even if it is coming from the General Assembly. And this might be the only solution in front of us if we have the time for that, because as we all know, that Israel still insists on continuing its ground operation in Rafah, which put the lives of millions of Palestinians in exact and clear danger.
Indeed. Sir, during his meeting with Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, President Sisi highlighted the danger of some countries cutting off their support for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for the Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, as collective punishment impacting the innocent Palestinians. What are these potential consequences, sir?
Well, first of all, this is a United Nations organization.
Yes.
Of course, we have to understand one thing, and we always keep this in the back of our minds, that this organization is only meant to help the Palestinian refugees. And accordingly, if Israel wants to hold or to halt its work, it can do this, and only it will affect the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And this is one of the bad sides of keeping this organization alive. We don't have another option for the time being. But I think on the long run, we have to resort once again to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.
Yes.
This is the organization that is meant to deal with all refugees all over the world. We should not just create an organization that is only aiming to work with Palestinians, and accordingly, if we stop its work, we are only harming the Palestinian and no one else, no other refugees left. The Palestinians have to be treated equally, just like the rest of the refugees. But Israel doesn't want that for the simple reason that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, one of its work of ethics is to give the right of repatriation to the refugees, which means that they can go back to their homeland. And Israel doesn't want Palestinians to go back to their homeland.
Yes.
That's why this organization was created. However, we have to understand that this is another example of the double standard that we've always been talking about.
Yes.
That for around over 32,000 killed Palestinians, most of them women and children and elderly people, this did not provoke in the free world any reaction. However, with a certain allegations that were never proven, and Israel never presented any evidence on the implication of 10 of its workers, of the UNRWA workers, with the attacks of the 7th of October. This was enough in those Western countries and Japan and other countries to hold any funding for the organization, which shows to which extent there is a double standard in the position of the European countries and, of course, the United States and Canada.
Indeed.
And I think that the call of His Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, that we have to help this organization is for two reasons. The first reason is that this organization is the best placed organization on earth in Gaza to help the Palestinians. They have the cadres, they have the personnel that is able to help the Palestinians and distribute the humanitarian aid. And second, because this represents once again the conscience of the world and the international community. And accordingly, we have to respect the job of this international organization that depends for its credibility on the United Nations. So its respect is part of the respect meant to the United Nations.
Yes, indeed. Ambassador Medhat Meligy, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much, sir, for your precious input. Always a pleasure. And Bassirou Diomaye Faye is a 44-year-old presidential candidate in Senegal. He is poised to become the youngest elected leader in the African continent. Faye was released just weeks before the election after spending months in prison and had led the polls. He promised to rule with humility and fight corruption. He also vowed to advance African political and economic integration and also pledged reliability to the Senegalese partners.
Anti-establishment candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye was set to become the youngest president in Senegal's history after his rival conceded the race, triggering a political earthquake in the West African nation. It marks a stunning victory for the 44-year-old who was only freed from prison 10 days before Sunday's election, whose results are not yet official. It is the first time in 12 presidential votes held under universal suffrage since Senegal gained independence from France in 1960 that an opposition candidate has won in the first round of voting. His main opponent from the governing coalition, Amadou Ba, 62 years, recognized Faye's win and rang him to offer his congratulations. Outgoing President Macky Sall, who did not stand after wins in 2012 and 2019, also congratulated him, hailing a victory for Senegalese democracy. Faye has promised left-wing Pan-Africanism and to renegotiate gas and oil contracts with Senegal due to start production on recently discovered oil and gas reserves later this year. The opposition candidate has never held a nationally elected position and has not yet spoken publicly since the vote, which followed 3 years of unrest and political crisis. Although the official results are expected before the end of the week, the newspaper front pages have already congratulated Faye.
Welcome back during Ramadan nights when Morocco streets enjoy a quiet ambience, tabel or drums and nafar or the horn players go through the streets playing their instruments to wake up people for suhoor meal. Despite technological revolutions in recent decades, some Moroccans still depend on the nafar and the tabel, the volunteer to walk down the Moroccan streets to wake up the people for suhoor, pre-dawn meal consumed by Muslims before the Al-Fajr or dawn prayer. Let's have a closer look in this report.
In Morocco, a nafar, also known as a town crier, is a seasonal profession that emerges annually during Ramadan. The nafar works for 1 month and stops their work once Eid al-Fitr is declared. Nofel Borkis, who works as a nafar in Rabat, explained that this is currently only found in the old city. As for the upscale neighborhoods, most of them do not accept the presence of the nafar because they say that they have a phone and an alarm clock that were used. As a symbol of tradition, Bucharest usually wears a special set of traditional clothes before he goes on his rounds in the old city. He wears a long shirt of jalaba, a headpiece of tarbouch, leather slippers, and bilga and white socks. While walking through the alleys, Bucharest plays a special tune that notifies people of the time of suhoor, which is different from the ones they perform inside the mosque. Borkis considers this work as a reward from God. In return, residents thank him with food, sugar, or a share of money.
Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching.